Luke, back again for another golf preview. I hope everyone was able to enjoy the week off from golf, take some time back, maybe look into the NFL, that kind of thing. That's exactly what I did. Started grinding out the start of the NFL season, started putting out my showdown content, weekly slate content, all that fun stuff. So wasn't exactly a week off, but really excited to be back in the thick of things. We have the NFL going on, golf, MMA, just a lot of exciting things, a lot of DFS contests as well. So a lot to keep me busy, but a lot of excitement and a lot of fun as well. This week we have a golf tournament down in wine country. We head down to Napa Valley for the Fortinet, don't call me the Fortnite Championship. We're going to be kicking off this 2021 season with an absolute bang, and I look forward to a great year ahead. Here in 2021, we're going to have the usual golf content out. We're adding NFL to the schedule as well, and we're going to be going over our MMA content and strategy content throughout the year as well. So don't be discouraged. Everything's going to be there. We're going to have all the content coming out week after week. And because of the week off and the timing of this event, this was the Safeway Open last year around, was also at Silverado Golf Course and Spa. But this time around, we have a much better field. So we had the week off. People were able to take their break last week. And we're ready to get back on the golf course. We have world number one, young studs like Will Zalatoris. We also have all of our Korn Ferry Tour promotions as well. So a lot of young talent, a lot of people that are hungry for their first ever victory. So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to preview this golf tournament. We're going to start off with the field very quickly, go over any of the tournament specifics, and then cap it off with our comprehensive course breakdown. What we do there is we talk about the types of players I expect to succeed here this week at Silverado Golf Course and Resort. I also go over the type of conditions I expect in terms of weather, whether anything changed year to year, whether they changed any par 5s to par 4s, lengthened any holes, that kind of stuff. We'll go over a comprehensive breakdown to get you completely situated for this golf tournament, whether you're somebody who's brand new to golf, somebody who's a seasoned gambler, or just a fan of the sport in general. My goal is to make sure you're completely prepared for this weekend. So with that, all that being said, let's hop into the field for this week at the Fortinet Championship. So kicking it off with some tournament details in our field. We have a full field of 156 golfers, so good to see there. We're going to have the full onslaught this weekend. It's going to be the top 65 in ties, so nothing's changed here in 2021. Very typical what we saw all of last year. In terms of the field, though, it's definitely a lot more star-studded than we're used to seeing. I mean, we have Jon Rahm, the world number one in this field. We have Hideki Matsuyama, Will Zalatoris, like I mentioned before. A couple other standouts like Kevin Na, Phil Mickelson, Cameron Champ, Siwoo Kim. Young studs like Mito Pereira. We even get the old guy Webb Simpson to come by. And we rounded out even Harold Varner III, Cameron Tringale. That's just to name a few. I mean, it's a very solid field overall. We have a lot of the young studs from the Korn Ferry Tour, like I mentioned, but also a lot of the just PGA Tour regulars. Obviously Jon Rahm, Hideki Matsuyama being the cream of the crop there. But we're not used to seeing that at this event. Typically at the Safeway Open, as it was called for its first two editions, we saw weak fields. The highlights were really Colin Morikawa. That was when he was on his way up. Bryson DeChambeau before he did the whole beefing up thing. Those sort of players. But now we see, obviously, world number one here. Will Zalatoris is a future top 10 player in the world. It's really gaining some respect, and a lot of that has to do with its spot on the schedule, like I mentioned before. They actually have a week off before this. Typically players use this as their vacation week. The players that can't afford to, like the Korn Ferry Tour players, or people that are just on the 125 to 150 line, of course played this event. But now you're getting a lot more of the cream of the crop, big name players. So you like to see that. In terms of some of the guys I'm really looking forward to seeing in terms of the Korn Ferry Tour promotions, we have Cameron Young, Hayden Buckley, Nick Hardy, Kurt Kitayama, David Lipsky. I expect great things from all those players this year. All of them were able to win over there in the Korn Ferry Tour. All of them were prolific winners internationally as well. They've all played over in the European Tour. Kitayama's played on a few of the Asian tours as well. So they're coming in with a lot more experience than most people expect, and I expect them to get out to a hot start. I expect almost all of these guys to finish in the top 30 this week, potentially even the top 10 if one of them has a ceiling performance. And I think it'd be a little bit much to ask them to go out and win, especially their first time out. There's going to be a lot of jitters, a lot more nervousness than perhaps some of the PGA Tour pros and that kind of thing. But I do expect solid performances. They're some of the best ball strikers in the world. We saw that in terms of their Korn Ferry Tour stats. I mean, we're just dominant on that circuit. And to be honest with you, the Korn Ferry Tour is not that far off from the PGA Tour. They're Very, very good players over there. It's a very fine line between the PGA Tour and Korn Ferry Tour. And you see a lot of guys that are on the PGA Tour for a very long time, end up falling out of that top 125, losing their card, and are never able to get it back. I mean, that's how close these two tours are. And if you're not getting better, you're getting worse, essentially. What we want to see too is the winning score here is going to be very much so under par. We've seen the winner reach 20 under par in 2020, also there in 2019 as well. Last year's winner in 2020 was Stewart Cink. He's not going to be present this year, unfortunately, so won't be able to defend his championship. A lot of that has to do with his caddy situation. His son is now going on to engineering. If you guys didn't know, he was using his son on the bag all year, was very successful with that, but is moving on to new endeavors. So perhaps is trying to get a new caddy, trying to get adequated with whoever's going to be holding his bag. So that's why we're not going to see him here this week. Obviously would have loved to defend. Loves this golf course, has said it multiple times, loves the Napa area. I mean, who doesn't, right? So don't like to see that, but we overall have that strong field like I mentioned before. And overall, this week's going to be for the hardcore golf fans, the people that pay a lot of attention, the people that put in the research, take and actually do their due diligence on these Korn Ferry Tour guys are going to have a very solid week. A lot of casuals are going to be playing because of the NFL season starting. They have their bankroll over on Draftkings. They see the golf contests on there and they decide to enter them. So there's going to be a much larger edge this week. And there's even going to be an edge over typical PGA Tour players. I mean, there's guys that don't know who Cameron Young is, Hayden Buckley, Nick Hardy. And I mean, these guys are very live to top 10 this week. You're going to get great salaries over on DraftKings or even on a betting board if that's your kind of thing. So overall, if you put in your due diligence this week, I think there's a huge edge to be had. So with all that being said, let's hop into the course breakdown of Silverado Resort. And now for our course this week, we have Silverado Resort and Spa. That's in Napa Valley, California, like I mentioned in the first part of the video. But this is a resort course. It's a birdie fest on steroids year after year. We're going to expect a winner 20 plus under par. And it's just quite simply because it's a resort course. This is designed for the everyday player, you and me, to go out, have a good time, and score 10 15 over par. For these PGA Tour players though, when you give them a golf course that's soft, it doesn't have many hazards with huge fairways, it's essentially like hitting the broadside of a barn. It's not necessarily the hardest golf course, and you see that with the scoring. 21 under par last year was the winner for Stewart Cink. Year before that, even more so under par, over at 23 under par. And using correlation analysis, this is where I relate a player's finishing position at an event to the seasons-long shots gained approaches or different metrics outside of the shots gained that we can correlate to their success in terms of a finishing position. The most correlated stat here at Silverado, and it wasn't particularly close, was birdie or better percentage, ranking top 5 on tour in terms of its importances. So birdie or better percentage, if you're new to golf analysis, what that is that's a ratio of a player's birdies scored on a card, that could be eagles as well, hole-in-ones, to the ratio of non-birdies, right? So higher birdie percentage means that players are a little bit more aggressive. They're going out, going pin seeking a little bit more. It also means that they could be better putters, somebody that just rolls in more putts, that kind of thing. Either way, a player excels in one of those categories, and that's what makes them a good birdie or better percentage player. Typically you don't see them excel with both the putting and the iron play. When they do, they end up like John Rahm, world number 1. But it's easy to imagine why birdie or better percentage is so important when we have a winning score that's going to go well over 20 under par. It's a resort course. Again, it's very straightforward. There's not many tree-lined fairways here, and when they are tree-lined, they're not dense trees. They tend to be cut up very high as well, so you have plenty of clearance to hit low runners up to the greens and whatnot. And there's not many greenside bunkers, so you're not going to see much protection in front of these greens. Again, that's to make it more of a resort style. Players are going to end up hitting a lot of chunk shots, especially when they're resort players. So as a result, you don't want to make them hit out of the sand all day and double and triple bogey holes. So you're going to see that when it plays out. It's going to be very easy. On average, though, the greens here aren't massive. They are 5,250 square foot on average, which is a little bit atypical for a resort course. We're used to seeing some massive greens, some flat greens as well. But here at Silverado, they do keep them a bit modest. Again, a lot of the easement of the golf course where it ends up playing a little bit softer is essentially everywhere else but on the greens. Let's take a look. So the next thing we want to talk about here is it's a par 72, very typical, but it's only 7,166 yards. That is very short. It's one of the shortest par 72s we see all year, almost as short as Harbor Town. In my correlation analysis, this is very interesting. Both driving accuracy and driving distance end up being middling stats, end up being right around 25 in terms of its importance when you compare it to other courses on tour. And what that tells me is that driving is really just not important here in general. Usually we see one of the two statistics there really pop. Longer golf courses, we'll see driving distance end up popping, and at courses with really penal rough, we'll see driving accuracy be emphasized. But it's not very common that we see both statistics essentially non-important, non-factors in our modeling this week. But that's what we have here. And a lot of that has to do with the size of the fairways. Essentially, you could fit aircraft carriers on all of them. They're massive. If you miss the fairway, it means you shanked your driver in terms of a PGA Tour Pro. And if we take a look at the distance, again, it's only 7,166 yards. So what this means is even the shortest hitters on tour, guys like Brendan Todd that'll average 270 yards off the tee, are still hitting short irons into the par fours. That's a big deal. They're able to apply spin to it. When you give a tour player a short iron, you're essentially asking them to put it to 5 to 10 feet, especially when they're on with their ball striking. So that's why we see the scores that we do here. Again, there's not many hazards. The tree line fairways are kind of a joke. Again, they're cut really high. There's no low-hanging limbs or anything like that cause any significant trouble. So as a result, it is going to play very soft. I expect a winning score to be well into the 20 under pars this week, like we've seen in the past. In terms of the surfaces we have here, we have a bent POA hybrid surface. What we're used to seeing over here on the West Coast. Again, they try to make it a hybrid surface so it could be a little bit more resilient. If one of the two strains ends up trying to overtake the other, the whole green doesn't die, that sort of thing. And again, they're of average size. They're 5,250 square foot on average. And that's what we're used to seeing on a PGA Tour event. So for a resort course, that is a little bit surprising. So approach play is still going to be important here. When you have greens that are a little bit smaller, typically the best approach players in the world really shine. And if there's going to be any defense here at Silverado, it is going to be the green size. So I am going to be heavily influencing shots gained approach into my modeling this week. Something I also want to mention about these greens, especially because it's a bent POA surface, is that they are the most polarizing surfaces on the entire tour. So what I mean by polarizing surfaces is that the guys that are really good on bent POA are really, really good on bent POA. And the guys that are really bad at bent POA really struggle on the surface. It's very glaring. Something on Bermuda, pretty much everyone's about an average putter on Bermuda, but when we get down to the bent POA surface, you got to make sure that you're targeting your bent POA specialist. So you'll see that with my analysis. I'm essentially weighing 90% bent POA this week and only 10% putting baseline. It's very much so important. Going to be one of the biggest factors in my modeling. And while this course is relatively easy, like I mentioned, we're still going to have to look at shots gained approach. A close examination of finishing positions at Silverado from 2019 to 2020 bear this out as well. Over 50% of top 10 finishers would be considered ball striking specialists by my custom modeling. Those being players that are in the top 50 on tour in terms of their shots gained ball striking for the year. So with this in mind, we have to be on top of the birdie or better percentage, like I mentioned, but we're taking a deep look at shots gained approach. And lastly, we have to take a look at shots gained on bent POA surface. Again, it's very polarizing. It's one of the few golf courses that we see every single year that has this surface. Typically, it's courses like Pebble Beach over there on the West Coast in California, that kind of thing, where we see this surface. A little bit of emphasis is going to be put on the 125 to 150 yard range this week as well, as Silverado presents more shots in that range than any other course on tour. And yes, that's even Harbor Town. Over the last 2 years of correlation data, it ranks number one on tour in that range. So if we're going to be looking at shots gained approach, we're going to probably put a 25 to 30% weighting on that range, just to make sure that we're taking a look at some of those wedge specialists a little bit more than we'd be used to. So that's all we have for the key metrics for this week at Silverado. That's all I've got for the course breakdown this week. Make sure to stay tuned for my Draftkings picks. Those will be coming out this afternoon for the DFS contest at the Fortinet Championship. Let me know in the comments what you think the winning score is going to be this week. I have it at minus 23 right now, but let me know in the comments down below. If you end up getting the winning score right, I'll enter you into a draw with anyone that also ends up getting the winning score right for a free month at my Patreon. Again, I think it's going to be 23 under par, but let me know down below and perhaps give me a reason why. Maybe you think the wind gets up a little bit, the scores end up being a little bit higher, or perhaps you think somebody really gets to the golf course and takes it to 25, 26, 26, maybe even 27 under par. As always, make sure to like and subscribe if you guys enjoyed the content. It really helps me out with growing the channel, and I really appreciate it again. Football season's full swing, so if you're an NFL fan, make sure to check out my channel for my preview for the Monday Night Football game. We have the Ravens and the Raiders, going to be an absolute slugfest. So if NFL is your thing, make sure to check out my channel. But until my DraftKings picks later on this afternoon, I'll see you guys later.